The Jets are hard at work getting ready for the 2024 season. Let's break down the highlights of day one of training camp today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, July 25th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangrenNation.com. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. Subscribe to the show for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll get new episodes as soon as they're posted. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, please give it a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, the Jets are at training camp. They got things underway yesterday, had a light practice. A number of key members of the team had media availabilities. We are ready to go. The Jets are training for the 2024 season. Let's talk about what happened on day one of training camp. Now, today's when they really hit the field. Today's when they really hit the field hard. It's the first scheduled practice of the year for the Jets, but the day before that's always interesting. Jets hit the field for a little bit of light workout, and also the key members of the team speak to the media. Of course, there's no key member of the team more key for the New York Jets than Aaron Rodgers. He spoke and he offered a few interesting nuggets, I thought. He talked about the quote unquote controversy of the minicamp he missed, and if you missed that, I envy you if you missed that, because that was a topic of discussion for quite a while. It led the NFL Network and ESPN talking points for a couple of days during the mandatory minicamp over the offseason program. Rodgers was not present, and he revealed, it actually came out in the media, and he confirmed it yesterday, that he went on a vacation in Egypt. And his explanation was quite simple. He booked the vacation after he suffered that Achilles injury, and he timed it according to what the Jets' offseason practice schedule was a year ago. And this year, the Jets had a little bit of a different schedule. So their minicamp, based on the schedule he had from the previous year, he thought the Jets would be off at that point. It turns out that vacation was the same time as the Jets minicamp. And, the Jets fined him because it was a quote unquote unexcused absence, but everybody moves forward. And, I feel like I'm part of the problem here because I'm talking about it, but I just want to ask you a question now, because especially if you were somebody who was making this out to be a big deal. Now that the Jets are practicing, do you think this is a big deal? Do you think this is going to impact the team's preparation for the season? Do you think when the Jets go out and hit the field, Rodgers not being at training camp is going to contribute to them losing games? I don't. I think Aaron Rodgers is a guy who's been in the NFL since 2005. This is his 20th season. I think he knows how to prepare for the season, and I don't think a couple of practices in minicamp during the offseason are really going to do a whole lot to make a difference. The guy's going to the Hall of Fame. The guy's one of the top 15 quarterbacks of all time. Is missing a couple of practices really going to be that big of a deal? Yeah, look, could he have canceled the vacation? I mean, look, I'm not Rodgers' travel agent. I know there were reports it was a non-refundable trip. Look, a non-refundable trip probably means a little bit something different to Aaron Rodgers than it does to you and me. Could he have skipped it? I guess. Is it a big deal? No. And, our friends at The Athletic did this report last week that, there was some unhappiness between Rodgers and Saleh, but they worked things out. And Rodgers says he's happy now. And yeah, look, I'm sure Rodgers wishes they excused it. But, just in the same sense that, like, sometimes you just get a little annoyed with your boss. Like, we all have moments where we get annoyed with our boss over little things, and it's not a big deal and it blows over. That's kind of the impression I get with this whole situation with Rodgers. So I hope this is the last time I'm going to be talking about it. Again, I feel like I'm part of the problem because I'm talking about it here. But I feel like I need to emphasize. I feel like I need to stand up and say none of this was a big deal. All of this was overblown. I think a lot of it was due to boredom, just because it came at a point in time where the NFL calendar was quiet. You get past the draft, there's not a lot to talk about. So if you see anything that can drive controversy, if you see anything that can, generate headlines, as a member of the media, you're going to go for it. So I can't imagine, like, there are other Jets players who pretty much spelled it out when they spoke to the press yesterday. Was it a big deal? No. And so that was pretty much the company line, which it's tough to doubt because it's just a couple of offseason practices. Haason Reddick, I said this at the time it happened. I get a lot of predictions wrong, but I remember I did a show at the time this happened where I said, people are going to make a bigger deal out of Rodgers skipping minicamp than Haason Reddick, but Haason Reddick's the bigger deal because Reddick skipped minicamp with a message. And that's what I look for when a player skips a mandatory part of the offseason program. He's like, is he trying to send a message he's not happy with the team? That's the message Reddick sent. The message Rodgers sent was, I'm going on vacation. And Rodgers was here the entire voluntary part of the offseason program. Rodgers has never expressed any sort of dissatisfaction since the time he came to the New York Jets. And we know that Rodgers is not a guy who's shy about telling you when he's dissatisfied based on his last couple of years of Green Bay. Believe me, if Rodgers was unhappy, we'd know about it because he's not one to hold back his frustration when he's unhappy with his team. So hopefully this puts this all to rest. Hopefully we never have to discuss Rodgers going to Egypt again. Hopefully we never have to discuss Rodgers going to the darkness. Hopefully we can just avoid the Rodgers craziness. Can we just have like one season where we don't have any silly drama involving Rodgers generated by the media? That would be nice, wouldn't it? I certainly hope so. Maybe that's a dream that's just not realistic, but I hope maybe we can get there. Other than that, Rodgers, said some pretty basic things. He talked about how he felt the Jets are one of the 8 to 12 teams that has a legitimate shot to win the Super Bowl, which, is the confidence you'd expect. And a lot of it depends on how good Rodgers is. If Rodgers is, comes back and plays at the top level, then I think almost any team like him as a quarterback would have a pretty good shot. He also mentioned, it's going to take some time to get all the way back from his Achilles injury. That's natural. It's always an injury like that. I don't think it's going to be the type of thing that should I don't think like he's in any danger at this point. I don't think it's the type of thing that should hinder him in any major way going forward. But I think, whenever you suffer a major injury, it takes time just to get your timing back. It takes time to get your rhythm back. It takes time to get back into the workflow, all those things, very natural. And, the good news is that as we're recording this podcast, it's July 25th. The Jets don't open the season until September. I believe it's September 13th in San Francisco. So Rodgers has a very long time in training camp to get himself prepared. Sounds like all systems are go as far as him on the practice field at this point. It doesn't sound like he's going to be held back in any way. And to the extent, Rodgers is still recovering, it's a lot of the stuff you'd expect him to be recovering from. And a lot of it's not due to the injury. A lot of it's just, again, getting back into the flow of practice, getting himself ready for the season, getting himself prepared. And then, another big thing will be that first hit. Guys who come back from injuries will always tell you there's always this doubt in the back of their mind until they take the first hit. And you don't want Rodgers to take a lot of hits, but the concept is that, after you take that first hit and the Achilles is fine, then that's kind of a benchmark for a lot of players where you say, okay, this can withstand a hit. So Rodgers will have to get to that point. It's one of those catch-22s because you don't want Rodgers taking hits, but that first hit, will probably be beneficial for him. It'll probably eliminate some of the doubts that he's got in the back of his mind. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention to the head coach. Robert Saleh had some things to say to the media. He discussed the Haason Reddick situation. He discussed a position change the Jets have. He also discussed the contrast between training camp this year and training camp last year. We'll hit on all of that, continuing here on this Thursday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. It's not just baseball. You can use Gametime for anything. I've used Gametime for college football, for tennis, for a Broadway musical. Every single time it's been close to the start of the event, I've just opened up the Gametime app. A couple of clicks, and I've got amazing seats at prices I still can't believe. Gametime is just phenomenal. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. LOCKEDONNFL. It's one word with no space for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. And a big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we're talking about Jets training camp opening. We're getting closer to the season. We were through the really, really quiet part of the offseason. Now we at least are to the point where the Jets are preparing. It feels like it's all downhill from here on our way to the season. And, the first day when everybody's at training camp, you hear from a lot of people. The media gets access to a lot of key members of the organization. Most notably, you get access to the quarterback and the head coach. And when the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers is number one. That's the number one